So what if I told you that you could be an amazing boss without having to sacrifice your kindness? Well, today we're diving into a really revolutionary idea from Kim Scott's book, Radical Candor. The promise is to do just that. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so this single idea right here, it's the foundation for literally everything we're going to cover. The book makes this incredibly bold claim. You don't have to pick between being respected and being liked. You can, and honestly, you should, be both. It's really all about mastering that human connection, especially when the stakes are super high.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to kick things off with the core idea. Then we'll break down the central equation. After that, we'll dive into the 4 different feedback styles, cover some really practical tools, and then to wrap it all up, we'll see what it actually takes to build an entire culture of candor.
All right, let's jump right in with part 1, a radically human idea. You know, this is all about completely reframing how we think about management. Moving away from just focusing on performance and getting into something way, way deeper.
So here's this tension that I bet a lot of us feel at work, right? There's this constant, relentless push for performance, and a lot of the time, psychological safety just gets tossed right out the window. Radical Candor doesn't shy away from this. It confronts it head on and shows us that there really is a better way.
So the big question is, how do we find that better way? Well, that brings us straight to part 2, the candor equation. And you'll see, Scott's whole framework is built on a philosophy that is, well, it's deceptively simple but incredibly powerful. And here it is, the secret sauce. This is the core formula. You have to care personally about the people you work with, and you have to be willing to challenge them directly. It's when you put those 2 things together, that's when you get radical candor.
But here's the thing, and this is so important to get. This isn't just some simple formula you can just plug and play. It's a whole philosophy. It asks a lot of you. It demands emotional intelligence, some real moral courage, and a deep, genuine commitment to growth, not just for your team, but for yourself too.
Okay, this brings us to part 3, mapping your feedback style. And this is where things get really interesting, because Scott gives us this brilliant model. Think of it like a diagnostic tool or even a mirror that helps you see your own leadership tendencies really clearly.
Okay, so this is the core model. I want you to picture a map with 2 axes. On one, you have care personally, and on the other, challenge directly. Now, when you nail both of those, boom, you're in the radical candor quadrant, and that's where trust just blossoms. But what if you care a lot, but you totally avoid challenging people? Well, that's called ruinous empathy, and that's where growth just stalls out. Okay, now let's flip it. What if you challenge people directly, but you don't show you care? Uh-oh. You've just landed in obnoxious aggression, and that's where fear runs the show. And the absolute worst place to be? That's down in manipulative insincerity. You don't care, and you don't challenge. That's a breeding ground for office politics.
And this is what's so powerful about this model. It's not just some abstract theory, right? It's a mirror. It really forces leaders to look at themselves and confront their default behaviors. So just take a second here and be really honest with yourself. Where do you think you land most of the time? You know, to really understand the power of this stuff in action, we've got to talk about this famous quote. This is exactly what Sheryl Sandberg said to Kim Scott, word for word, right after a big presentation. Now, that piece of blunt feedback, it became a massive turning point for Scott's career. And why? Well, it wasn't because it was harsh. It was because it was honest. And this is the crucial part. It was rooted in a deep sense of care. See, Sandberg had already proven over and over that she cared personally, and that's what gave her the right to challenge so directly. Okay, so we've covered the what. Let's talk about the how. That brings us to part 4, tools that build trust. This is where we shift from the big ideas to the practical, almost soulful toolkit that Scott lays out for us.
So Scott gives us some seriously powerful practical tools. First up, one-on-one conversations. And look, she sees these as almost sacred spaces. They're not for status updates, they're for really understanding people's dreams and their fears. Next, we have feedback rituals. This is all about making your praise super specific and your criticism genuinely kind. And finally, there are career conversations, which are all about connecting the daily grind to someone's bigger life goals. Now, this next idea, this is a total game changer. It reframes feedback. It's not a performance review, it's a relationship ritual. Just think about that for a second. It becomes an ongoing practice of building trust, not some scary once-a-year judgment.
And all of this naturally leads us to our final section, Part 5, a culture of candor. Because radical candor isn't just a personal thing you do.
It's a blueprint for building an entire organization that functions more like a living, breathing organism.
So, what does a culture like this actually look like in practice? Well, for starters, truth becomes normalized. Feedback can flow freely, up, down, sideways, all directions. Second, vulnerability is actually honored. Leaders admit when they're wrong and the teams grow stronger because of it. And third, purpose becomes personal. Work starts to feel like a source of real meaning, not just a checklist of metrics.
You know, when you really get down to it, Radical Candor is kind of a meditation on the ethics of leadership. It's proposing that the best bosses, they're the ones who dare to just be human, the ones who lead from empathy, not from ego. It's all about finding that sweet spot of being honest without being a jerk and being kind without being a pushover. And look, if there is just one idea that you take away from this entire explainer, I hope it's this one. The book is really a reminder that the single most powerful thing any leader can do is to be radically human. It's a call to arms, really, to lead with courage, to speak with clarity, and to care unconditionally.
So I want to leave you with a challenge. Thinking about everything we've just talked about, what's the most radically human thing that you can do as a leader this week? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.